The boarding call for Flight 237 from Chicago to Los Angeles crackled through O'Hare International Airport, already an hour late thanks to a stubborn Midwestern snow flurry. Sarah Thompson, a 32-year-old graphic designer with a nervous smile and a backpack slung over one shoulder, shuffled down the jetway, her golden retriever mix, Luna, trotting beside her. Luna's bright orange vest screamed "Emotional Support Animal" in bold black letters. A badge of honor Sarah had fought tooth and nail to secure after months of therapy and paperwork. She clutched Luna's leash a little tighter as they stepped onto the plane, her hazel eyes scanning for seat 14B. To Sarah, Luna wasn't just a pet, she was a lifeline. A furry anchor for the anxiety that sometimes clawed at her chest mid-flight. Today, she thought, would be no different. She was wrong. Mark Delaney, a 45-year-old accountant with a perpetually furrowed brow and a carry-on stuffed with tax files, had already claimed 14A. He'd popped an antihistamine preemptively. Airplanes were petri dishes, after all, but nothing could have prepared him for the sight of Luna's wagging tail brushing against his khakis as Sarah slid into the window seat. His nose twitched. His eyes narrowed. Then came the first sneezy, a sharp, involuntary blast that made the woman in 13C turn around with a glare. "Excuse me," Mark said, his voice tight as he leaned toward Sarah. "Is that a dog?" Sarah nodded, her tone calm but firm. "This is Luna, my emotional support animal. She's certified, and I've got the docs if you need to see them." She patted Luna's head, the dog's big brown eyes blinking innocently as she settled across Sarah's lap, her fluffy fur spilling onto the armrest. Mark's face flushed a splotchy red, his hand instinctively patting his jacket pocket where an EpiPen lay in wait. "Certified or not," he snapped, "I'm allergic, severely allergic. You can't just bring that thing on a plane next to me." The air between them crackled with tension, a silent standoff brewing as the last passengers trickled aboard. "Look," she said, her voice steady but edged with steel, "I've got every right to have Luna here. She's not a pet, it's a necessity. Deal with it," he sputtered, his voice rising enough to make the guy in 15A pull out his earbuds. "I've got an EpiPen in my pocket because dogs like that," he jabbed a finger at Luna, "can put me in there. My health trumps your whatever this is." Luna let out a small whine, sensing the heat, but stayed put, her fur brushing Mark's leg, a tiny unintentional taunt. A woman in 13B whispered to her husband, "Is he serious?" While a teenager across the aisle discreetly angled his phone, the red recording blinking to life. Sarah's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then ask for a new seat," she said coolly. "I'm not moving." The plane lurched as it lifted off, the ascent pinning them in place physically and figuratively. Mark's sneezes punctuated the silence, each one a grenade lobbed at Sarah's resolve. She stared out the window, clutching Luna, refusing to blink first. Mark glared at her, then at the call button above, his finger hovering. The cabin lights dimmed for takeoff, but the spotlight was on them, and the audience passengers, and soon the internet was leaning in. Neither would yield, and the war of words was about to turn into something far messier. Flight 237 had barely leveled off at cruising altitude when the standoff in row 14 erupted into pandemonium. Mark Delaney, his face now a swollen map of indignation, decided words weren't enough to let his body do the talking. He unleashed a cough so theatrical it could have won an Oscar, a hacking, wheezing symphony that rattled the tray tables. "Can't breathe," he gasped between fits, clutching his throat with one hand and waving his EpiPen with the other. His eyes locked on Sarah Thompson like a prosecutor facing a guilty defendant. Passengers craned their necks, some annoyed, others alarmed, as the teenager in 15C zoomed his phone camera in, muttering, "This is gold." Sarah, unfazed at first, rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on, you're not fooling anyone," she said, her voice cutting through his performance. But then Luna, stirred by the commotion, squirmed in her lap, her leash slipping through Sarah's fingers like a wet noodle. In a flash, the golden retriever mix was free, bounding down the aisle with a joyous bark, tail wagging like a metronome gone wild. "Luna, no!" Sarah shouted, half standing as her furry lifeline darted past knees and carry-ons. A kid in 16D squealed, "Puppy!" while an older woman in 17A clutched her purse like it was a shield. The chaos hit warp speed when a flight attendant, a wiry guy named Tim with a clipboard and a fading smile, dashed after Luna. He didn't see the roller bag sticking out from 15E. His foot caught, and down he went right into the drink cart parked mid-aisle. The crash was deafening. Metal clanged, cans of Coke and Sprite burst like mini geysers, spraying soda across rows 15 and 16. A woman shrieked as her white blouse turned brown, and a guy in 16F yelled, "Are you kidding me?" Luna, undeterred, skidded through the puddle, licking at the sticky mess with delight. Mark seized the moment, leaping to his feet, his voice booming over the din. "This is a circus. Get that dog and her off this plane." His finger jabbed at Sarah, who was now out of her seat, chasing Luna with a mix of panic and fury. "She's not hurting anyone." Sarah snapped back, dodging a soggy napkin that sailed her way from an irate passenger. The cabin split. Half the plane chuckled at Luna's antics, the other half grumbled, a chorus of "do something," rising toward the crew. Phones were out everywhere now, red dots blinking like fireflies, capturing every soda-soaked second. Tim scrambled up, soaked and red-faced, barking into his radio for backup as Luna circled back toward row 14, her paws leaving sticky prints. Sarah lunged and snagged her leash, pulling the panting pup close, her chest heaving. Mark loomed over them, dripping with righteous anger and a little Sprite. "You see this?" he roared, gesturing at the chaos. "This is on you." The air crackled with shouts, barks, and the hiss of a LaCroix can still leaking somewhere. The plane flew steady, but row 14 was a war zone, and the fuse lit back at takeoff was now burning down to its explosive core. The cabin of Flight 237 was a sticky, barking mess, the air thick with soda fumes and shouting, when Mark Delaney decided it was time to play his ace. Still dripping from the drink cart debacle, he towered over Sarah Thompson and Luna, his face a mottled red mask of fury and desperation. "Enough is enough," he bellowed, ripping the EpiPen from his pocket like a knight unsheathing a sword. "I'm not dying for your dog." Before anyone could blink, he jammed the device into his thigh with a dramatic grunt, only to freeze, eyes widening in horror. The needle didn't budge. It was bent, a useless relic from some past fumble, and the epinephrine stayed stubbornly in its case. Mark's bravado evaporated as he wobbled, then collapsed back into 14A, clutching his leg. "I'm fine," he wheezed, though his ashen face said otherwise. Sarah, clutching a panting Luna now safely leashed, stared in disbelief. "You're insane," she muttered, but her triumph was short-lived. The chaos had drawn a crowd, passengers leaning over seats, phones aloft, and Tim, the drenched flight attendant, barking into his radio. "We've got a medical emergency and a dog situation," a woman in 15B yelled. "He's faking it," while a man in 16C countered. "She's the problem, control that mutt." Luna, oblivious, licked soda off Sarah's hand, her tail thumping like nothing had happened. Then the intercom crackled, cutting through the uproar. "This is your captain," came a gravelly voice laced with exasperation. "We're 30 minutes from Omaha, and if this doesn't stop, we're landing there. Sit down now." The threat hung heavy, but Mark, still slumped in his seat, saw his opening. "Land it," he croaked, waving a shaky hand. "She's a hazard, get her off." Sarah spun toward him, her voice rising. "You're the hazard. You just stabbed yourself with a broken needle over nothing." The cabin buzzsome cheered her on. Others shouted her down. A cacophony of soda-sticky loyalties. Tim and a second attendant, a stern woman with a bun so tight it looked painful, stormed down the aisle. "We need order," she snapped, but her eyes widened as she spotted Mark's EpiPen on the floor, its bent tip glinting accusingly. "Sir, are you actually allergic, or is this a stunt?" she demanded. Mark sputtered. "Of course I am, look at me," though his welts seemed less dire by the minute. Sarah scoffed, holding Luna close. "He's been coughing like it's Broadway since takeoff. Check the footage." The teenager in 15C grinned, waving his phone. "Got it all right here." The plane jolted through mild turbulence, mirroring the storm below. The stern attendant grabbed her radio. "Captain, we've got a possible medical case and an animal loose earlier. Simone's got to go." Passengers held their breath, phones trembling in sweaty hands, as the stakes hit their zenith. Mark's gambit had backfired spectacularly. Sarah's resolve was ironclad, and Luna's innocent panting only fueled the fire. The breaking point had arrived, and the next move would decide who'd walk away, or be dragged off in Omaha. Flight 237 was still slicing through the clouds toward Omaha when the chaos in row 14 catapulted from a cabin squabble to a global spectacle. The teenager in 15C, a lanky kid named Jake with a TikTok obsession, hit post on his shaky footage Mark's EpiPen flop, Luna's soda-soaked sprint, and Sarah's fiery standoff with the crew all condensed into a 60-second clip captioned, "Dog vs. Allergy Guy, Flight Meltdown." By the time the plane's wheels kissed the tarmac for an unscheduled stop, the video had racked up 500,000 views on X, and the numbers were climbing like a rocket. The red recording dots from dozens of phones had birthed a viral monster, and the internet was ready to feast. Within minutes, X erupted into a digital coliseum. Team Sarah trended as mental health advocates rallied. "She's got rights, Luna's her lifeline," tweeted at Mind Matters, a therapist with 200K followers, attaching a link to the Air Carrier Access Act. Memes of Luna dodging soda cans flooded timelines, captioned "Emotional Support Queen." But Mark wasn't defenseless. Team Mark surged with allergy sufferers and skeptics. "That dog's a biohazard. EpiPen guy deserves justice," posted at SneezeFree, a dad whose own anaphylaxis story got 10K likes. A grainy still of Mark's theatrical cough became a GIF, looping endlessly with, "When you fake it, till you break it." The footage spread like wildfire across platforms. On TikTok, Luna's Isle Dash got a dramatic soundtrack, "Sweet Caroline," blaring as soda sprayed in slow-mo, hitting 2 million views in an hour. Reddit's r/public freakout subreddit dissected every frame. "EpiPen dude's a drama king, but that dog shouldn't be loose," argued u/FlightRisk99, sparking a 3,000 comment thread. Back on the plane, passengers still buzzed, some refreshing their feeds mid-flight. "We're famous," Jake crowed to his seatmate, showing off his follower count spiking past 50K. Sarah, cradling Luna in 14B, caught wind of the uproar when a woman in 13A leaned back, phone in hand. "You're trending, hum, people love your dog." Sarah's lips twitched into a half-smile, but her eyes stayed wary. Mark's collapse had rattled her, even if she'd won the round. Mark slumped in 14A, oxygen mask dangling from a medic who'd boarded in Omaha, scrolled X with trembling fingers. "This is a disgrace," he muttered, seeing his EpiPen fail mocked in a cartoon captioned, "When your bluff's as bent as your needle." His allies online vowed retribution, but the tide was turning. Luna's floppy ears were stealing hearts. The crew, frazzled and fielding calls from headquarters, confiscated Jake's phone for investigation. But it was too late. The story was airborne. Hashtags like lunatic flight and EpiPen fail top charts, and news outlets scrambled to catch up. Midair mayhem. "Dog drama divides plane internet," blared a CNN alert. As the plane idled in Omaha, the world watched, judged, and memed, oblivious to the final showdown brewing between Sarah, Mark, and the captain's gavel. The court of public opinion had convened, and it was a hung jury, hungry for the verdict. Flight 237 sat heavy on the Omaha tarmac, its engine silent but the air inside crackling with anticipation. The cabin, still reeking of soda and tension, held its breath as the co-pilot, a burly man named Captain Ruiz with a no-nonsense scowl, strode down the aisle, his boots thudding like a judge's gavel. Behind him trailed Tim, the sodden flight attendant, and the stern woman with the tight bun, her radio spitting static. Sarah Thompson sat rigid in 14B, Luna's head resting on her knee, while Mark Delaney slumped in 14A, oxygen mask dangling, his eyes darting between the crew and the medic hovering nearby. The internet was ablaze, but here at 30,000 feet no more, the real reckoning was about to drop. Captain Ruiz stopped at row 14, arms crossed, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "I've got a plane full of people, a diverted flight, and a mess that's gone viral. Someone's leaving now." Passengers leaned in, phones still rolling despite Tim's earlier confiscation attempt. Sarah spoke first, her voice steady but sharp. "I've got the law on my side. Luna's approved. He's the one escalating this." She nodded at Mark, whose welts had faded to a faint pink, his EpiPen stunt now a glaring misstep. The stern attendant, whose name tag read Marla, snorted. "Approved or not, that dog ran loose." "But you," she jabbed a finger at Mark, "you're not exactly dying, are you?" Mark straightened, yanking the oxygen mask off. "I could have died," he protested, though his wheeze sounded more petulant than perilous. "She's a hazard, her and that mutt." I demand she's removed. A few passengers clapped Team Mark loyalists, but a louder cheer rose for Sarah, drowning him out. Leave the dog alone, yelled a woman in 16D, cradling her own soda-stained kid. The cabin teetered on the edge of a riot, and Ruiz's scowl deepened. He raised a hand, silencing the uproar. I've seen the footage, he said, glancing at Jake in 15C, who shrank under the glare. And I've heard from HQ. Here's the call. Marla stepped forward, her tone clipped. Mr. Delaney, your medical claims shaky bent EpiPen, no real crisis. You're off. Mark's jaw dropped. What? He sputtered, but the medic nodded. You're stable, sir, just mad. Before he could argue, 2 airport security guards materialized, summoned by radio, their badges glinting. Let's go, one grunted, hoisting Mark's bag. He stumbled to his feet, glaring at Sarah. This isn't over, you'll hear from my lawyer. The guards escorted him out, oxygen mask trailing like a deflated flag, as scattered applause and boos followed him down the jetway. Sarah exhaled, stroking Luna's ears as Ruiz turned to her. You and the dog stay, but you're moving to first class. Less drama up there. Tim handed Luna a biscuit from his pocket, a peace offering, and the cabin erupted in cheers, louder this time. A victory chant for the underdog duo. Jake, still filming, hooped, "First class, Luna," as the crew hustled to clean the soda mess and prep for takeoff. The plane's doors sealed shut, Mark's exit a closed chapter, and Sarah's triumph etched in the faces around her. But the story wasn't done, not with the world still watching, ready to crown its heroes and villains. As Flight 237 roared back into the sky from Omaha, leaving Mark Delaney's indignant exit in the rearview, the cabin settled into an uneasy calm, soda stains drying, tempers cooling, and Luna snoozing across Sarah Thompson's lap in the plush expanse of first class. The golden retriever mix, now a biscuit richer thanks to Tim, had no clue she'd just become the internet's newest darling. But down on the ground, and across screens worldwide, the aftermath of Row 14's showdown was igniting a firestorm that would outlast the flight itself. By the time the plane touched down in Los Angeles 2 hours late, but triumphant Jake's viral clip had ballooned to 3 million views on X, with mirrors popping up on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Luna's soda-soaked dash, set to everything from Sweet Caroline to dramatic Hans Zimmer scores, became a TikTok sensation, racking up 5 million likes. The hashtag LunaLovers trended globally, spawning fan art Luna in a cape, soaring over a plane, and a flood of emotional support dog appreciation posts. She's the real MVP, tweeted at DogMomGen, attaching a photo of her own pup in solidarity, a sentiment echoed by thousands. Sarah, stepping off the jetway with Luna trotting beside her, caught a glimpse of her phone buzzing with notifications, strangers calling her a hero, a fighter, a voice for the anxious everywhere. Mark, meanwhile, licked his wounds in an Omaha airport lounge, nursing a coffee and a bruised ego. He fired off a bitter tweet. Allergic and abandoned, thanks airline. Lawyers on speed dial. But the response was brutal. EpiPen fail gifs of his bent needle flop drowned out his rant, with that allergy warrior snarking. Next time, check your gear before you play martyr. His Team Mark faithful tried to rally, but the tide had turned. Luna's floppy ears and Sarah's quiet grit had won the day. A CNN headline sealed it. Flight 237's dog drama. Allergy man out, pup prevails, complete with a still of Mark's ignominious exit. The story didn't just fade, it grew legs. Jake, now a minor celebrity with 100K followers, sold his footage to a news outlet for a tidy sum, bragging on X. From 15C to TMZ, the airline, scrambling to save face, issued a statement. We prioritize safety and regret the disruption. Complimentary biscuits for all pets on future flights. Luna's biscuit moment became a meme of its own. Captioned, "When you win the war and the snacks." Sarah, swarmed by reporters at LAX, kept it simple. Luna's my rock. We stood our ground. Her words hit X like a rallying cry, amplifying Team Sarah to new heights. Back in first class, as the plane emptied, Tim swept up the last of the soda cans, muttering, "Never a dull day." But dull was the last thing this flight would be remembered for. Luna's legend took flight, a shaggy symbol of resilience, a viral victor in a world that loves a good underdog tale. Mark's lawsuit threat fizzled into obscurity, Buried under 1 million likes for a dog who turned a flight from hell into a story for the ages. The internet crowned its queen, and Flight 237 landed not just in LA, but in folklore. So, Flight 237's saga ended with Luna licking biscuits in first class and Mark licking his wounds in an Omaha lounge, but the real question lingers. What's this circus at 30,000 feet got to do with us? Plenty, it turns out. In a world where we're all crammed together on planes and offices, or scrolling X screaming at strangers, we all got our Lunas and our EpiPens, don't we? Maybe yours is a loud neighbor, a coworker's perfume, or that one guy who won't mute on Zoom. Point is, we're all one sneeze away from our own viral meltdown. Here's the lesson, served with a grin. Life's too short to jab a bent needle into your own leg just to prove a point. Mark's out here teaching us that the hard way. Instead of escalating, maybe grab a biscuit, pat the dog, or don't if you're sneezy, and find a seat that works for everyone. Compromise isn't sexy, but it beats trending for all the wrong reasons. We're not saying Sarah was perfect. Luna's aisle sprint wasn't exactly a masterclass in chill. But she knew her rights and stood her ground without turning it into a one-man tragedy. Balance, folks, it's the real MVP. So what's your verdict? Are you Team Sarah, barking for your boundaries, or Team Mark, wheezing for your space? Ever had your own flight from hell moment where you wished for a Luna to save the day or an EpiPen to wave dramatically? Drop it in the comments, we're dying to hear. And hey, don't fly off just yet. Hit that subscribe button for more wild tales where dogs, drama, and dumb decisions collide. Next time we might even figure out how to keep the soda in the cans. See you in the skies.